Welcome to episode 60 of the Achieve Workplace Culture podcast, where we help you, our listener, find actionable ways to build that workplace culture you've always wanted. I'm joined today by my two co-hosts, Wendy Lowen and Chris Downey. Welcome to you both. Can I ask you a question?
Yep, sure can.
Who do you trust? Name a person or two.
I trust you. I trust Chris. I trust my husband. I trust my mom.
You got lots.
I got a list. Yeah.
Wow.
I have a couple of very good friends that I trust.
Yeah. I trust my partner, my wife, Melanie, for sure. That's the name that first popped to mind.
Yeah.
Within the workplace, there's, I think I would actually, as you just started rattling names off, I'm trying to think about who here wouldn't I trust?
Right. Yeah.
And I don't have a whole lot of names that would pop to mind.
Nice.
Interesting. That explains why I feel so good when I'm here.
Nice. Yeah. I thought about my partner as well. And I also thought about the workplace. There's a lot of people I trust here. And there isn't anybody I don't trust, actually. So interesting, that feeling of trust. So today we're going to explore trust, but we're also going to explore it. We talk about trust a fair amount. We've talked about in previous podcasts, the connection between demonstrating care as a leader and the creation of trust in the work environment and impact on culture. But today, let's look at it from an opposite perspective. How do you break trust? And then if that has happened, what do you do to rebuild from that experience of broken trust? So I'm wondering if one of you wants to start with, what have you seen or maybe experienced or to your horror done that you have thought has broken trust in some way?
Want to go ahead, Wendy?
Sure.
Not to suggest I know that you've broken trust. I just, I sense some
Wendy,
energy
Well,
that you
I'll
had
talk
something
about it
to
from
say.
a high conceptual level.
okay.
How's that?
Go for it.
I do think that, we often think about breaking trust as these big issues that come up. And I think there are, like when a leader behaves unethically, trust is broken. But I think more often trust is broken in micro moments where they may not even be intentional. They're not malicious, but there's a misalignment between something. And so I think trust can be broken in a wide variety of ways. We can break trust by just being silent. And not addressing issues, performance issues, not having the difficult conversations. And our team sees this happening and we're not having those conversations. And then when we do, the person we're having the conversation with is like, well, why didn't we have this way back when? So we've broken trust with that person, but we've also broken trust with the larger team that they're a part of and we're a part of because we haven't safeguarded the larger team. So I think silence is one. I even think sometimes we have habits that can break trust, like being distracted on our phone or showing up late to meetings. There are small ways that we can break trust. And I also think inconsistency. When people can't come to rely on us, they don't trust us. Because when you said, I trust my partner, Mel, I think about my husband, Pete, who I trust implicitly. And part of that is consistency as well. I know the things I can rely on him for.
Right.
And in our work context, the same. So I think habits, silence, and then also, our behaviors can dramatically influence the trust that people feel in us.
Yeah, I think it can be, I think you articulated very well there, Wendy. I think it can be broken in so many ways. And it's naturally, when we think about breaking trust, we go to the massive, egregious things. Right. Well, that's all pretty obvious stuff, but it shows up in, I would say, not doing what you say you're going to do.
Yes.
Or not behaving in the way that you say this is important. Yeah. Like you said, Wendy, I'm present, I'm here, and the phone is out. That's subtle, but it's a little like that's sending an incongruence to the person you've just said, I'm present, and you're paying attention to your phone. Right. So we can break trust in so many ways, unintentionally. For sure. What are you thinking, Eric?
It's similar. I think that trust often gets broken in a slow slide. It's not always the big dramatic thing. It's, embezzlement breaks trust, of course, but that's actually often a slow slide.
It is, absolutely. That, right? Even those egregious things are generally not one-offs. There have been things leading up.
Right.
Yep.
And so it's often that, and it's often in the patterns and the behaviors. I think about when I have had the experience of having a colleague or somebody on a committee that I've been a part of who has consistently not done the things they've said they're going to do, I start to not trust that they'll do what they said they're going to do.
Yeah.
And so all of a sudden there's this barrier, and it wasn't the first time or the second time or maybe even the third time, but it's the accumulation over time. And so how do you know, I guess, like when you think about our listeners, and we're all we're leaders, our listeners are probably leaders somewhere in their organization, or they wish they were, and they're thinking about trust, and they're thinking, how do I know if trust has been eroded? And what do I do to recover if I'm at the center of that?
Sure. Well, one of the things I just want to simplify, how do you break trust?
Yeah.
I think it is, you don't do what you say you're going to do, or what's expected of you. Those two pieces, whether that is in relationship, that is at work. I think we can boil it down to those.
That's really helpful.
Like it's either
expected of me. I need to be competent in my job and take care of the team and the relational environment, or
I've committed to this. Do what you say you're going to do. Those are the kind of the two foundational pieces. And then, but to your point, if we're saying usually the big stuff comes out of these incremental pieces, how do you know when you've broken it?
Yeah, how do you know? Does anyone?
Well,
ideas?
I think we've talked lots about this. So let's think about this in the leadership context, because that's what this podcast is really focused on. Let's be honest. Actually, maybe that's it. How do you know you've broken it? Is be honest with yourself. You know when you've said I'm going to do this and I didn't often. Mm-hmm. You know when you show up late to a meeting and you come in, you say you're going to be on time. Mm-hmm. So it's, first of all, it's about acknowledging the realities and taking ownership for them. Maybe we could talk about how to recover, but right now it's how do you know the moment you don't do something you say you're going to do, or you meet the expectation. And there are things that could happen out of our awareness. I think in many cases, though, it does. Like just use that coming in late to a meeting.
Yeah. If that's a habit that you have, and we actually probably know what our habits are, then figure out a way to change that habit, create a new one. That's the onus is on us to make the change. And if it has to do with a lack of skill, like we don't know how to have the conversation, or it went poorly, and we reflect on that and we go, oh shoot, that went sideways. We need to own up to that, have the conversation, but then we also need to spend the time developing the capacity to have those kind of conversations.
And this is so important, because I think if we were to survey everyone in the room here and say, how important is it to you that you're viewed as trustworthy?
Yes, very.
Right? Like we're all going to say that's off the charts. And even as I'm just thinking about that, I'm thinking about myself, just some of my own behaviors that erode trust in my peers, in my leaders, and maybe even in my partner. Yeah. That is actually the opposite of how I need to show up in all of those circumstances.
Right.
So I think part of it is acknowledging the reality. And if that relationship, whatever the relationship is important to you. Yes. Then we need to take some steps here.
So I have this thing that just popped into my head.
Go ahead, yeah.
I showed up about 3 minutes late for this podcast today.
Right.
In my head, I'm sitting at my desk as we're getting really close to recording time, and I'm prepping for the intros to each podcast, and I'm thinking this is really important. But I walk into the room, so I have a justification in my head for being late. I walk into the room and I sit down, and I didn't say anything about having showed up late. Because in my head, I've justified my behavior.
Right.
But what hasn't happened is I haven't communicated with anybody about that and said, I'm sorry, I took some of your time. So I wonder if what we need to do, what I need to do is instead of justify, discuss, see if there's been an impact. And if there is, own it and say, I'm sorry.
Right. Or at minimum, just acknowledge it, which you just did, by the way, Eric.
Yeah.
But just to acknowledge it. Hey, sorry, I got distracted with preparing and I'm a few minutes late. Even the acknowledgement at least builds the trust that, oh, he's paying attention. She's paying attention. She acknowledges that something didn't quite align with what we had agreed on, what the expectation was.
Yeah, and sometimes it can be subtle. And I mean, whether an apology is required or not, it could be situational. But even just acknowledging, basically saying, I recognize this, and here's what it is. But part of it, too, is in those moments, and I think we were okay with it. We were okay. I don't think we realized that you were even a few minutes late at that point. But But part of it is also recognizing, oh yeah, as much as we were justifying it to ourselves, what's my commitment to these folks, and keeping that top of mind. I think linking this back to what you were saying, Eric, how do we know? We talked, a few podcasts ago about, the leader that you want to be, or the partner you want to be, anything you want to be. Keep yourself connected with that. And as me holding, not doing this thing in line with that, no, okay, then I should probably have a conversation about it and take ownership for it. I think fundamentally, how do you come back from a breach of trust is through accountability, through ownership. I'm happy to talk about that.
Yeah. And there's a time to say, hey, I don't want to use the example repeatedly about coming in late, but that's the one we're using right now. But to check in with people, hey, what was the impact? And now Chris has said, and it's like, well, it was a few minutes late. We got caught up in conversation. It's all good.
Yep.
We were fine. So I think to check in with others, hey, I felt I wasn't sure if I was being consistent. I'd like to check in with you. What's the impact here for you? And you listen. And sometimes there's a conversation that follows, and other times you just let things go. I'm thinking about the other day, my husband and I had agreed to have supper at a certain time, and he was late. And I'll just say this, I wasn't annoyed. But if he came in and he checked, he was like, oh, I'm so sorry I'm late. I had this come up. He said, how was it? I know you were planning. I was like, it's all okay. And there doesn't have to be a lengthy conversation around some of these things. Other times, if this would become a pattern, then maybe there is a longer conversation. And when there's hurtful things that are done, I think it's incredibly important to acknowledge the hurt, the rupture, the tear that's happened, to be present in that, to be uncomfortable and sit with that uncomfortable.
Right.
And then, where it's appropriate to apologize. But the important piece, I think, is we actually then have a responsibility to change our behavior going forward. It's not just okay to say, sorry. It's like, yes, sorry. And part of my apology is my commitment to a better future.
Right. And you mentioned something there about pattern recognition, realizing, oh boy, this is a pattern. So this is not just about this one piece. I am perpetually overscheduling myself and coming in late to these things. Okay, there's a pattern here. That's a clue to me that I'm not having the impact on people in my life that are important to me. What am I going to do to change that pattern? Because you could apologize. You have good people around you, they'll forgive. But over time, if that pattern doesn't change,
then your apology is empty.
It is. So I think, take ownership, even when it seems relatively insignificant, and also recognize the pattern that might be at play. And then it's the pattern that we might need to break, or realize that, the pattern is I'm not going to plan all of these meetings in one day, because that's still breaking the pattern, I guess, at that point. Because sometimes, I'll be honest, I know I've scheduled things where I know it's going to be tight.
Yep.
I've already set myself up for failure right there. So, okay, so all things being perfect, this is going to work. We're going to wedge a half an hour meeting in.
Yeah.
And then it doesn't. Yeah.
Wendy?
Yeah, and linking this back to workplace culture, if we want a culture where people show up for meetings on time as a leader, by virtue of showing up late, and if it becomes a pattern, we communicate that's the culture here. It's acceptable behavior.
Yeah.
When we own it and we apologize and we state our future intentions to be on time, then we start to create a culture where timeliness is important.
I agree. So maybe let's bring this now into building on how do we repair what's been broken. Because one of the sayings I've often heard is trust is hard to build and it's easily broken. And I actually don't fully agree with that. Now, I do agree it is easily broken, but I actually think you can come back from breaking trust.
Yes, you can.
And build strength even stronger than what was present before. But it's in how you deal with that. So maybe we're talking about being late, and let's talk about something a little bit more significant, where maybe you've broken trust in a more substantial way when, maybe someone shared something with you in confidence.
Yes. And then
you said, okay, this is between us. And all of a sudden, with well intentions, you share it with somebody else.
Right.
And now they find out.
Right.
And now you're in this situation where I broke trust. I said I would be, to me, that would be How do you come back
from that trust? So I used to be a mediator.
Yes.
And I used to do what's called victim-offender mediation, where I facilitated dialogue between people who committed a crime against another human being. So sometimes that was assault, sometimes it was threats, sometimes it was a break and enter, but significant, and it really affects trust because sometimes these people actually knew each other, sometimes they didn't. And in many cases, trust could start to be rebuilt, but it started with the foundation of the person who was called the offender acknowledging that, yes, I did that thing, and I'm willing to listen to and hear the impact that I've had on the other person, to truly listen and hear that impact, and then to make amends in some sort of way that was substantive for the person who was hurt.
Yeah.
So this is about now let's take it to the workplace.
Yep.
I have hurt somebody in the workplace. I've shared somebody's story with somebody that I shouldn't have. They found out about it and they're really hurt that I did that. I'm their leader. I shouldn't have done that. I should have known better. My job isn't to go and justify it. My job is to say, tell me how I've affected you, to acknowledge that. And at that point to say, what can I do to start to make things right with you? In a way that's going to make a difference.
Yeah. And then to make a commitment to that change.
I do it
going forward. Yeah.
Yeah. It's that, I think that is that key is to take ownership for the behavior and acknowledge the effect it has had on the individual. And I think what's really, really important, because this is so hard in these moments, is to not make excuses for why you did what you did or what it is. Like, I recognize, I'll share stories. A personal story. This was years ago. We're at a party out, a bush party, and my wife and I, who were dating at the time, overheard some friends having a conversation about us. And it was hard. It wasn't nothing too major, but we were like, oh my gosh.
Oh, shoot.
It's one of those scenes. And we made it known. We had heard the stuff that had been said. And we were driving home, and one of our friends was in the vehicle with us, who had been part of it. And I remember he said two things. Now, this was not a well-rehearsed apology, but he said, I'm sorry you heard that. And he stopped and goes, wait, I'm sorry I said it.
Yes.
And he fully acknowledged it. It's like, you can even hear the emotion in my now. That was 30 years ago.
Right.
He's one of my best friends. Yeah. I trust him. Has he made mistakes since? Yep.
Yeah.
Does he own it? Yes.
Yes.
And I think that's the key. It's we're going to break trust in various forms, being late or maybe something more significant. It's about, to me, coming back is acknowledging what we've done and the impact, and don't justify. Well, I did that because. Not go there.
Doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing that story, Chris, because I think that also illustrates that with this friend, you had a positive history of trust, that you could count on this person, and that hopefully when we break trust, that we have enough emotional, gas in the tank that allows us to come back from that.
Sure.
So that we have a strong connection. We know we can rely on the other person. They are trustworthy. They're not perfect.
Yeah. Right. Well, and I was going to say, nothing builds trust better than someone taking ownership.
That's right.
So even if you don't have all that kind of the reserves, I think someone actually, in a legitimate, authentic way,
owning what they did.
That's a trust building action, I would say.
Nice.
Yeah.
Well, let's let that be the wrap up for this episode on trust. For you who are out there in listener land thinking about your workplace and trust and your own ways that you've contributed to building trust, or the opposite, think, instead of justification, think about listening and think about owning behavior and understanding impact, and then asking, how can we move forward in a way that works for both of us? With that, we'll wrap up. If you like this episode or others, please like, share, subscribe, and we'll see you next time on the Achieve Workplace Culture podcast.
Looking for free resources, training, and consulting in the areas of leadership and workplace culture? Be sure to check out achievecenter.com. That's achieve, CENTRE.com.